Hello everyone, thank you for joining us at this news hour on Équinoxe Television, broadcasting from Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. My name is Babla Jonathan. In our top stories in this edition of the news, farmer grazier conflicts breathe tension in the Dongamantum division, northwest region of the Republic of Cameroon. Recently, at least 6 persons were killed there. Houses and markets burnt down in several villages in that part of the crisis-stricken northwest region, and the phenomenon of ghost town continues prevailing across the two English-speaking regions of the country in crisis for more than 4 years today. In some areas, inhabitants are using the ghost town phenomenon as an opportunity to mobilize community efforts to solve some underdevelopment challenges in that part of the country. And in Mosogo, in the Mayo Moscota division, far north region of the Republic of Cameroon, inhabitants continue escaping violence as Boko Haram terrorists have been inflicting pains, sorrow, destruction, killing in that part of the country on the population in that part of the country. And in the east region, the social crisis is growing there as many persons continue escaping violence in neighboring Central African Republic into the east region of the Republic of Cameroon. In neighboring Nigeria, children are becoming prime targets of kidnappers. Since December 2020, more than 600 students have been kidnapped in the northwestern part of the country. Those were our top stories. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on this edition of the news on Equinoxe Television. We begin in crisis-stricken northwest and southwest regions of the Republic of Cameroon, where the phenomenon of ghost town continues prevailing. On Mondays, the many parts of the two regions, streets are deserted as a result of the ghost town phenomenon imposed by pro-independence fighters within the context of the more than 4-year-long armed conflict in those parts of the country. In Mulang, in the northwest regional chief town, Bamenda, inhabitants are now using the ghost town phenomenon as an opportunity to mobilize community efforts to solve some underdevelopment challenges there. Bustela reports.
This wooden bridge is what linked Mulang Street 1 to Street 5 and the rest of the town of Bamenda. During the wet season, heavy rains leave the bridge unusable. With local tools in their hands, expertise from amongst them, the inhabitants of Mulang are working to have a new bridge link the two communities.
This project, it overtouched me very well, because when we come up for here for cross Street 5, we go round, we will not meet up with where we go.
They are also avoiding any incident as the wooden bridge is gradually becoming a death trap.
We actually embarked on this project because we badly needed this bridge. Because this bridge, our students, pupils have been falling on this bridge on several occasions. We have tried, we called for the government to come to our assistance, to no avail. So that is why the community took it upon themselves to do this work.
We picking the overfall for the bridge. Boko, they go inside water. Picking go slide self fall. Even a day with heavy rain, they will yell, do the shout, follow now, go pick them.
The inhabitants of Mulang are realizing this bridge after 4 months of putting their efforts together.
As you see the work go on, so maybe say some people don't support the money. So now community they can be this money. Then there's more money. We like the councillors and the quarter will collect the quarter development fees. We join hands with the would see as many work make work fine.
This work actually has taken us a colossal sum of almost 4-point-something million francs, which it is the community that contributed this money and that had gotten this money to put up their bridge.
They are celebrating the bridge, but the road network in this community and beyond is a major call for concern. They are muddy during the wet season, and the dust during the dry season, health experts say, causes some respiratory and cardiovascular diseases.
Civil society leaders continue criticizing the move by some members of Cameroon's lower house of parliament, more than 60 of them who wrote a letter criticizing what they consider as derogatory and misleading information published by the U.S. congressmen on the situation in Cameroon in a statement and in a letter which they sent to Joe Biden, talking about the some Cameroonians who were to be deported back home. And the congressmen indicated that the situation is quite deplorable and complex with regards to the information presented by the asylum seekers to the U.S. administration. And some of the members of parliament said that the U.S. congressmen were misleading the people and could contribute to fuel the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. But this has met a backlash from civil society leaders, and some of them, speaking to the Inside, criticized notably the fact that some opposition members of parliament signed that letter, including the first vice president of the Social Democratic Front, Honorable O.C. Joshua. The latter has responded to that criticism coming from across the board. Notably, O.C. Joshua has published a statement in which he explains his position as far as that letter is concerned. Greater details in this report compiled by Innocent Aze.
A civil society actor on the Inside on Equinoxe Television did not sound supportive to letter addressed by some 62 members of parliament, including those of the CPDM and SDF, to some 40 U.S. congressmen who had, in a correspondence to President Joe Biden, quoted extreme conditions in Cameroon such as gross human rights violations, sequestration of Anglophones in the two English-speaking regions, and other socio-political tensions, demanding actions be taken, like grant Cameroonian immigrants in the United States a temporary protected status or a deferred enforcement departure. In reaction, the Cameroonian lawmakers hit back at what the term falsehood relates in the letter, meant to tarnish image of Cameroon's parliament. In reaction, this civil society actor seems to know Cameroon's parliament so well.
We watch how the members of the ruling party stormed out, walked out of the parliament when this crisis began. We have watched different members of the parliament ignoring the cries and pleas of their various constituencies to talk about this issue in the parliament. For almost 4 years, Cameroon parliament has not gathered the muster or the will to come out and address this issue.
Padia Sanga, a civil society leader, is indifferent.
The Cameroonian parliament have never sat to debate on the Anglophone crisis. When the people were marching on the streets, MPs demonstrated, none of them did not react. Cameroon parliamentarians, they should be proactive and they will not get themselves embarrassed in that.
Marshall thinks Cameroon's parliament is one of the worst he has come across.
It's a kangaroo parliament because if a country as Cameroon have been engulfed in this war for 4 years and the parliament has not mustered the courage to talk about it, but they have the audacity to respond to the letter from senators and congressmen from a foreign country that has taken interest of what is happening in their country, and they are only now responding to that letter. That shows you that the Cameroon people do not have a parliament that is there to solve the problem of the Cameroonian people. I think that parliament has to be dissolved and we have to start all over again because that parliament has failed the Cameroonian people.
Regarding response of the Cameroon lawmakers describing contents of the U.S. correspondence as untrue information relates, Padia Sanga opinionated on this.
The way these lawmakers function, they have people whom in their cabinets that they call lobbyists. And when the lobbyists, they want to take notes and bring to this congressman, they write it the way the people who pay them want it to be written. American politics is all about money. So that letter it has its place. That is how American politics works.
Amongst the Cameroonian MPs who signed the response to the U.S. congressmen is SDF MP of Parliament, Honorable C. Joshua, who fires back at critics, saying he advocates for a strong Cameroon, united in a federal system of government. He says his action was just a starting point where both houses of Parliament could diplomatically discuss ways out of the current armed conflict in the two English-speaking regions.
And the British High Commissioner to Cameroon, Rowan James Laxton, and a member of Cameroon's lower house of parliament, Honorable Malumba Esembe, discussed the Anglophone crisis and other issues today during an audience. The member of Cameroon's lower house of parliament granted the British diplomat. Derek Jato finds in details from Boya.
Britain, if not on all, but on many occasions, has demonstrated that she still has the interest of her former territory, the former British side in Cameroon, at heart. And here he is in Boya, His Excellency Rowan James Laxton, the British High Commissioner to Cameroon.
Your Excellency, how are you? Welcome to Boya. Thank you. It's nice to be here. Such a great pleasure to have you here. That's great. That's very nice to be here.
And during an audience granted by Honorable Malumba Esembe, Member of Parliament for Boya Urban Constituency, to the high-level delegation led by the British High Commissioner to Cameroon, had the Anglophone crisis on the table.
The silent majority of the population in the English-speaking regions want peace through reconstruction. There has been so much suffering, and giving them development is part of the package towards having peace come back fully.
Then, youth, technology and business.
We also discussed the Silicon Mountain, especially how to connect the tech entrepreneurs here in Boya to private businesses in the UK, because as you would think, COVID, like in any country, has led to a reduction on British government spending on, direct spending in foreign countries. But we are hoping that we can connect our guys here with British businesses that will support them.
And on how to improve on the road safety in the nation.
The issue of road safety, which I happen to chair the network in Parliament, also came up. And we're happy to learn from His Excellency that a British company, West Safety, is already in partnership with the Ministry of Transport to support activities in that area.
The over 1 hour exchange between this Cameroon lawmaker and the British diplomat ended up on a satisfying note.
We are already doing work on women, peace and security. I think one of the people that Honourable introduced me to this afternoon is somebody who is very much an expert pioneering the importance of trauma issues. So that's something which we're looking at. We're also been talking about youth issues, I think, which are very important.
And it is expected that in the days ahead, fruit of such a high-profile meeting will be reflected.
Now to Mosogo in the Mayo-Muskota Division, far north region of the Republic of Cameroon. Inhabitants of the area have continued escaping because of violence orchestrated by militants of the Nigerian terrorist sect Boko Haram, who have continued to launch attacks on that part of the far north region of the country, killing persons and destroying properties. And now, in efforts to limit or put an end to Boko Haram activities and atrocities in that part of the country, the council has equipped vigilante committees to help in the fight against Boko Haram. Details of Smanjik and Gabriel.
Mozogo village in the Mayo-Muskota division of the far north region is steadily losing its inhabitants, who are running out for safety. Government offices no longer open regularly, schools shut down, and produce abandoned in the farm due to unannounced raids from the Boko Haram set. We don't know what to do because we can't eat or sleep in our houses. When it rains, it falls on us in the bush. Offices and schools have shut down because of insecurity. As a result of this ongoing raid from Boko Haram, many have been killed while others have been kidnapped alongside their cattle, which are being seized by the Islamic sect. Some inhabitants who have decided to remain in the locality doing petty business say every day they have to take their things that they sell to their houses and come with it the next day. My store has been attacked on 2 occasions, so I've decided that when it is 6 p.m, pack out my items and return them early in the morning. The Vigilante Committee that is expected to provide security to the inhabitants of Mozogo say they are powerless because they don't have adequate materials. We have just sticks and machetes, and they come with more superior equipment that we can't attack them. The cry of this vigilante committee is now heard as the Mozogo Council has acquired some equipment to reinforce the vigilante committee. They include motorcycles, torchlights, machetes, and other equipment that were given to them. The rural exodus observed in Mozogo is the same happening in many villages within the Far North region.
The influx of refugees on the Central African Republic into Cameroon has plunged the east region of the country into a disturbing level of social crisis. The high number of refugees on the Central African Republic has brought enormous pressure on the limited social services in the region. Fomi Armstrong Sander has more.
The political and social crisis in the Central African Republic has provoked an uncontrollable influx of refugees into the east region of Cameroon, a pressure which has also further created a food crisis, water crisis, pressure on limited social amenities, and a security crisis on host communities. On education, for example, civil society groups in the region regret that several refugee kids roam the streets of the east region without going to school because of the inability of their parents to pay fees. The actors of the civil society also say that PTA levy, for example, gives no exception to refugee parents in the East region.
On constate toujours qu'il y a les déperditions scolaires. Beaucoup d'enfants, que ce soit les jeunes garçons et surtout les jeunes filles, on les trouve en train de faire du petit commerce par-ci ou par-là.
The civil society actors say the massive refugee presence also poses the problem of social integration in communities with difficult cultural norms, and by extension has provided a fertile ground for gender-based violence.
Des enfants, en matière de violence basée sur le genre, parce que
the actors say one of the major crises created by the presence of the refugees is their pressure on the limited infrastructure within the 11 communities of the East region.
Ce sont les communautés qu'on a beaucoup de réfugiés en l'Est.
There are places with higher numbers of refugees and also places with difficult cultural beliefs.
Liés aux normes sociales dans cette 11 communautés.
As part of a non-governmental effort to find one-by-one solution to the problems, the civil society is targeting that of infrastructure.
Projet BMZ, c'est un projet pour réduire la dépendance des aides des infrastructures sociales.
The DMZ is a project aimed at reducing the dependence on social infrastructural assistance by refugees and members of host communities.
À restructurer les communautés, les infrastructures sociales.
The actors also recognize a couple of challenges in working to provide solutions to the problems of the East region. Some of the obstacles, according to the civil society actors, include inaccessibility, cultural barriers, and unfriendly social norms.
Tens of cancer patients go on rampage in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. They stormed the Douala General Hospital protesting against the closure of the radiotherapy unit since the 22nd of February 2021 without any concrete explanation given to them. And the closure of the unit, according to the angry patients, has provoked the death of some. Details with Immaculate Fogwe.
Cancer patients expressing discontentment over the recent closure of the lone radiotherapy unit in Cameroon. These patients stormed the premises of the Douala General Hospital, demanding for the reopening of this unit.
Inadmissible for a country like Cameroon not to have a radiotherapy center. We had one machine for 10 regions, and now the machine has been shut down. So where do all these patients go to? This is just a handful. There are more than 400 patients. So where do we go to complete our treatment? We started the treatment, we can't complete it.
The center, which was temporarily shut down on the 22nd of February due to the poor functioning of its machines, has led to several fatal incidents.
From Tuesday right up to Friday, we had 4 dead cases. It is not normal. It is not normal at all. That machine needs to be replaced, or they open the center. We manage the spoiled machine that is there, because it is that same machine that has cured me. I'm a cancer active.
According to these patients, financial constraints is a major setback, given that many of them are low-income earners.
The nearest center in Central Africa is in Senegal. Where do we get money? We don't have money to travel all the way to Senegal to go and do our treatment there. It is not normal.
The angry patients are worried about how they'll have to deal with their deteriorating health condition for a very long period. The director of the hospital, in the course of the day, convened a crisis meeting. The victims are expecting quick solutions to their plights.
The management of the Douala General Hospital has said in a statement that the hospital's radiotherapy unit has been shut down to renew the equipments that are already in a dilapidated state. Now, out of Cameroon, Nigeria's kidnapped for ransom crisis worsens, with children becoming prime targets of kidnappers. Since December 2020, more than 600 students have been abducted from schools in the northwestern part of the country. Last Friday's kidnapping of 317 students from the government girls' science secondary school in Jangebe, Zamfara State, was the second mass kidnap from schools in less than 10 days, and 27 boys and their teachers who were taken from a school in the Kangara, Nigeria, or Niger State, February 2020, were released last Saturday. Government authorities say recent attacks on schools in the northwestern part of the country have been carried out by bandits. This is a loose term for kidnappers, armed robbers, cattle rustlers, Fulani herdsmen, and other armed militia operating in the region. They are reportedly largely motivated by money, and at least 10,000 or 1,030 students have been abducted from schools in northern Nigeria since 2014. And that's it for the first part of this newscast. Coming up in Talking Points, we should talk about the farmer-grazier conflicts in the Donga Mantum division of the country, notably in Nwa. We'll be looking at the consequences. Recently, about 20 persons, or 6 persons rather, were killed. Several houses and markets burnt down as a result of that conflict. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us in Talking Points. We are receiving a member of Cameroon's lower house of parliament, Honorable Adamu Edward Lambe. He is the member of parliament for Donga Mantum East constituency, that is Noa, in the northwest region of the country. Honorable, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Right, you are the member of parliament for Noa, where there is a serious farmer grazier problem that is provoking the death of persons and destruction of properties. In the recent attack, about 6 persons were killed and several houses and markets burnt down.
Yes, that's true. Mr. Babila said that this way. Actually, at the moment, you tell me that such as farmer grazers issue. But I want to say that this problem, to a certain extent, stems from the current crisis going on in the country. At the initial stage of this crisis, there were some hitches between the terrorists alongside some of the Fulani people, and the cross section of them did move into the northern part of into Nigeria. And with the current situation going on, a cross section of the Fulani people crossed over from Nigeria, and it is also said that some of them came from Banyo, from Adama origin, and got the majority of the aged people. You're talking of 6, but there are about 8 people, because 2 days ago, 2 other corpses were discovered in between 2 villages. So they moved into this area, and everybody they met, either you were gunned down, and women and children ran into the bushes. Some have crossed over to Nigeria. So it is, I think it's well organized from Nigeria and from Banyo. They moved in. I must say that this part of the country is very porous. Ntong, Tim, these are villages that are closest to Nigeria, our last villages into Nigeria. And these are the villages that were attacked. I don't really want to think that's much of farmer grazers issue, because we have lived with the Fulani people for years. I was born there when the Fulanis were there. And they have lived all through. They are our brothers, they are our sisters. But if you see the current events that are happening, it's far from what used to happen. When farmers and grazers live together, hitches are bound to come up. And amicably, most of our problems were solved. But if you look at the situation now,
it has gone beyond this.
It's beyond that. It's not longer the
land and farming land.
Except some individuals have hidden agendas, which we don't think. If they have hidden agendas, it's either one of them will not live on that land, which we think it can't work. We're all Cameroonians. We're bound to live on that piece of land. We've lived with the Fulanis. I have Fulani brothers. My name is Adamu. My father had named me after Fulanis, or a Fulani friend. You see, so we've lived as brothers and sisters over the years.
What's the situation now, as you speak?
At the moment I'm speaking, the report I had from people on the field and also the senior divisional officer for Donga Mantu, the Fulanis who stepped in have crossed over to Nigeria. And now there's some peace because the military has stepped in. I must also say that some officials are moving towards that way. Not to let the cat out of the bag. I'll say that some officials are moving towards there to get ample assessment of what has happened.
Of the situation on the ground.
Yes.
Now, you seem to be indicating that the problem has actually degenerated to something else. And what is the cause of the problem as of now? Is it just the crisis? How is the crisis favoring the growth of such conflict between the people who had been living there and the Fulanis and so on?
Yeah. Mr. Babila, I would say that the initial part of the crisis, I think the Fulanis had been of great help to the government, and to a certain extent they had helped in curbing the activities of the separatists. I must say this, we must acknowledge that as the truth. And as you will know, for sure, this met with anger on the side of the separatists. So they had their conflicts at that level. Unfortunately, the separatists are not necessarily the villagers. You know that there are camps all over, and those camps do not mean that those camps are owned by the people of that village. The separatists come and impose their camps here and there. And some of those camps, their deeds were not the best. But I don't think the villagers were involved in it because the villagers themselves were helpless. The majority of the villagers they were helpless in front of the separatists, just as well as the Fulanis. But you know, when the Fulanis stepped in during this attack, it was like anybody they met, they crushed them. I bet you one of our senior citizens, who's a former DO, Mr. Femchak, was killed in his house. That's the last when they were about stepping out. So any man who was met was shot down. You imagine that most of those who were killed were about 80, 60 or 70 years old, which could no longer run. Who could no longer run because the strength wasn't there. The younger people and the wives and the women ran into the bushes. They've crossed over to Warkaka, Sarkaka, and their conditions there are really very poor from what I've heard.
Tell us a little more about the manifestation of this conflict. Open confrontations, targeted killings. What exactly is happening there?
Like the one that happened in Tong. At 4 a.m., these guys came in, started burning houses. Anybody that stepped out and was within their reach, they shot at. And, you know, the villagers are helpless. All they can do is to run. So there's no direct face-to-face confrontation. The villagers are empty-handed. They are not armed. Remember at the beginning of the crisis, it was said everybody that had an arm took it to the DO's office. Even cutlasses they don't have. So they can't even fight back. How will you fight back with somebody who has a gun, a sophisticated gun, and you are there with a knife or with a cutlass? So the majority of them ran into the bushes. So it's an attack, not like a confrontation. If the Fulanis, for example, went for the Amber Boys or for the separatists, it would have been okay that they fight and get their ways out. But they went for the natives. That's where we feel bad. I want to recall the fact that in Fair Village, just a few kilometers away from Mwa, an aged woman of about 80 years was knifed at night, still by one of our Fulani brothers. Well, we have found in one way or the other, all of us, I know the separatists had worked very poorly or had dealt with some of the Fulanis. But the action of late has been very, 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 very bad on the natives. And I don't think the natives would like to continue bearing this. I fear if it goes as such, it may deteriorate. Mr. Babila, we are at the borders. And what is happening in northern Nigeria and what is happening in northern Cameroon, I fear one day we'll find ourselves with the Boko Haram issue still finding himself within this territory if the state does not step in as early as possible.
With the porous borders?
Exactly.
That's going to be...
That area has. They step in, they attack, and off they are gone. So if the military is not placed somewhere there, then we are in for the worst.
From what you're saying, it can be concluded that this has nothing to do with the Fulanese who had been living there for years with the people, but mainly those who are coming in from Nigeria and Banyu.
Well, what I would say is this. It's a bit tricky. People will not leave Nigeria and come and attack within Cameroon if they don't know people within Cameroon. We think that probably some of our brothers, probably Fulani brothers, we think, we are not sure yet, no proof, probably work in collaboration with those people coming from Nigeria to carry out this attack. If not, who indicates the way into these areas? Who indicates which of the houses to burn? So think that there is some maneuver that is going on. But for the Fulanis we grew up with, we still have excellent relationship. It's true that nothing is perfect. You also have those people with emotional leakages who step out, attack our people, break into people's houses. Mr. Babla, take an example. If somebody steps into your farm and has a gun and he sends his cows into your farm, can you speak in the current situation we have in the northwest and southwest? We are desperate.
That becomes very complicated. Now,
extremely.
The phone of Rome, I hope I pronounced that well.
Yes, Rome.
Was kidnapped 3 times.
Yes.
And the phone of Luz,
yes,
shot 3 times,
You're
but
right.
He miraculously survived.
Yes.
The phone of Mbem also now seeking refuge in Makba and Bankim in the west region of the country, with traditional rulers, the leaders of the people, being targeted as well. How are the indigents reacting to this? Have they all escaped from their villages?
Oh, I would say that at the beginning, some of the chiefs tried to advise the separatists, who some of them were their children, children meaning that children from the villages, and they couldn't buy the opinion of some of the funds. And eventually the funds became targets. And that's why most of them ran out. But to assure you that some of the funds have already returned home, like that of Mbem, that of Luz, who was shot thrice. He even went into Nigeria to talk to his population that you need to come back, peace is already returning. On his way from Nigeria, that's when he was shot thrice. Miraculously, he survived. You know, the actions of some of the separatists are from abroad. We must accept that.
It is reported that you attributed what is happening there, the conflicts, to the diaspora. Why?
Well, it isn't true to a certain extent. The diaspora, I do accuse them in terms of schools. For 4 years, schools have not gone on. Betfongwa, Sabongari, and Bem, the other schools are not functional. When you start up the school, at the beginning of this academic year, I was on the field. I shared books, just like the year before last. When I shared books, when I even offered gifts to some schools, I bet you shortly after the schools were closed down, some of the teachers were kidnapped. And they were all delegated from abroad. That's the domain where I say diaspora is responsible for schools not happening. And I kept saying that in as much as they have also invested at home and they are not helping the children to go to school, we are preparing hardened criminals who eventually will be a danger to all of us. Children have not gone to school for 4 years. If they continue as such 6 years, 7 years, school is no longer valuable to them. And the immediate thing they will step in is theft. So we are not safe. They too are not safe. Even their properties at home too are not safe. I didn't say they were responsible for the killings in the far north, in the northern part of Yamba. They have been encouraging children not to go to school, or they've been discouraging children from going to school. That's that part of where I say they hold that responsibility.
No, they're responsible. Now, let us round up with this. I think this is very important, how to end all of what is happening there. Yeah. And you talked about an inter-community dialogue platform that you put in place to solve this thing. Yeah. Can you give us some information on that? What is it about, and how is you going to put that together, and how is it going to solve the problem?
Yeah, actually, I came in from 5 days ago. I lived the situation when I heard that a mother was killed in Fayaran there, and I tried to do some sampling of opinions. I have a group of think tanks who try to reason together, and we thought that it was time for all the sons and daughters of Nwa subdivision. Sons and daughters here includes the Fulanis and the natives, that we all have to sit on the table and look eyeball to eyeball and say, where did we go wrong? What do we need to do for peace to return to our area? We have planned that for the 19th and 20th of March. We pray that it goes successfully, and why not? We will go back to the early days where we live as brothers and sisters, and we're trying to discourage the idea of leaving our borders porous. Like I said, they've given us some assurance that a military detachment will be sent to the northern part of Yamba to check the porous borders. I think that we will be sure that life will go on very well in one subdivision.
All right. Where do you intend to do that?
That one, we're going back to one itself.
Everybody from home and abroad are expected?
We've invited those from the diaspora. We gave them 3 weeks. We have 3 weeks for the meeting to come up. We are having other groundworks that we are doing. We want to get the presidents of the Development Association of various villages. We work together. The Fulanis will work as a team. We work as a team. We come together and put all. Where do you think we went wrong? We think you went wrong here. Let's put them together and we see how we can have a permanent solution.
All right. Honorable Adamu Edward Lambe, MP for Donka Mantung East Constituency. Noah, thank you for joining us today.
The pleasure is mine, Mr. Babila.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for this edition of the news. Equinoxe will be coming up next, live from the nation's political capital, Yaoundé.